In this video, I'm going to be discussing my VR 360 production piece, its purpose, the key concepts behind my project, and my research-informed ideas. The purpose of my VR production piece is to entertain the user by giving them a 360 space in virtual reality to escape from daily life. My VR piece aims to recreate the sense of calm found in naturalistic environments, combined with a fantasy aesthetic. The key concepts of my project include alien flora and the natural phenomenon of bioluminescence. The Natural History Museum states on the evolutionary uses of bioluminescence. When luciferin chemically reacts with oxygen, it releases energy in the form of light. In this environment, the light some animals can create for themselves is fundamental to survival. In this way, the conceptual theme of my project is art and visual entertainment as a fundamental light for our survival. I will now discuss the research-informed ideas that have inspired my design piece, including competitor research inspirations and user research. My first inspiration is Blackreach, which is a large subterranean bioluminescent cavern beneath Skyrim. The environment is full of blue, glowing giant mushrooms and strange plants. I wanted to incorporate elements of this into my project. Another inspiration includes Biolume, a VR immersive underwater experience on MetaQuest. It features visuals such as glowing plants and animals and lots of aqua blue colours which I thought would be captivating. In addition to these examples, I am also inspired by all the different types of glowing and unusual alien flora found in the underwater game Subnautica. Another VR inspiration is a game called Raccoon Lagoon. I was inspired by the ethereal and glowy nature of the landscape blended with fantasy. I also like the stylized low poly style as this would be easier to render. I also looked at a game called Fuji Gardening Adventure. This is a game where you can play as a magical gardener in an ethereal world in space, and this inspired me that it could be fun for players to be in outer space for my VR experience. The demographic for this experience has a wide age range from 18 to 54. Pain points include massive maps being off-putting. User wants include vibrant and fascinating colours, something nice to look at. Accessibility needs include a safe experience and an accessible experience which can be accessed standing or sitting. I will now discuss how I created my designs in Blender for the project. I started with creating some blue trees by bringing in basic cylinders, extruding them to create the trunk. I then brought in a sphere and put a subdivision modifier on it, using proportional editing to shape the leaves. Then I began to shade the trunk using nodes. I stretched the noise values to make the bark texture, and I also used a colour ramp to pick two colours to be the light and dark shades. Next I used a circle and added the fill face with the grid tool to give more geometry, as well as a subdivision surface modifier to allow me to raise some areas of the ground, as well as be able to use weight painting to scatter assets onto the area. I also used the shading workspace to create a two-tone texture of dirt and grass. Following this, I created some grass by bringing in a plane, scaling it down, adding loop cuts, and bringing the top vertices together to make a point. I shaped them to give some natural looking variances found in nature, and then I duplicated them to make different tufts and blades. For the flowers, I brought in a circle and gave it a poly count of 5, which gave me a hexagon shape. I scaled it down, extruded the sides, and filled the middle face. I raised this middle on the Z-axis to make it look more like a 3D flower. After this, I sized down a plane to make the stem and went into the shading workspace to change the colours. I also created some big glow flowers which utilised the leaves I created as well as flower stems, but I added a sphere to the top of them and gave it a blue light diffusion effect in the shading workspace. Next I created some leafy plants and succulents for the environment using the plane mesh and adding loop cuts. These could then be tapered at the ends and curved into leaf shapes before adding a thickness modifier. To replicate the ferns I sketched, I used a Bezier curve tool to create some glowing swirled shapes inspired by fiddlehead ferns. I then clicked and converted it to mesh and added some glowing fruits to make it bioluminescent. For the glowing mushrooms, I shaped a sphere mesh by extruding it up and out. I created seams along the outside of the mushroom to take into the paint workspace later. I applied a 3-colour ombre to it in the shading workspace, as well as some noise to create a speckly texture. I also added a node for the mushroom glow texture before going into paint, selecting this texture in the drop-down, painting the white dots on and giving them some light emission for the glowing effect. I propose to use Hicks' law, which will utilise the small space of the 360 environment to allow people to have this VR experience without feeling lost or overwhelmed with choice.